prison ship floated in the darkness of space like a metal tomb. It spun slowly around the dead planet Kepler 442c, where no sun ever shone and no life could grow. Inside the massive structure, thousands of prisoners from dozens of different worlds lived in small metal boxes they called cells. Kim Tae sat on his narrow bed and stared at the gray wall in front of him. His hair had turned completely white during his 15 years in this place. Deep lines marked his face like a map of all the pain he had endured. His hands, once quick and sure on computer keyboards, now trembled slightly when he moved them. Vorthak guards called him the Quiet One. They said this because Kim Tae never caused trouble. He never fought with other prisoners. He never shouted at the guards or complained about the terrible food. He simply sat in his cell each day and looked at the wall with eyes that seemed to see something far away. Other prisoners tried to talk to him sometimes. They wanted to know what crime had brought him to this horrible place. But Kim Tae only nodded politely and said nothing important. After a while, most people stopped trying. They decided he was just a broken old man who had given up hope. The guards thought the same thing. They saw him as harmless and boring. When they walked past his cell during their rounds, they barely looked at him. He was just another number in their endless list of prisoners. Cell 47B, Kim Tae, human. 15 years served. No problems. But they were all wrong about Kim Tae. Commander Vex walked through the prison corridors with heavy steps. His purple skin gleamed under the harsh white lights. Like all Vorthak, he stood nearly 8 feet tall and had forearms that ended in sharp claws. His yellow eyes missed nothing as he inspected his domain. Vex took pride in running the most secure prison in the galaxy. In 15 years, not a single prisoner had escaped. No riots had broken out. No rescue attempts had succeeded. He kept perfect order through fear and absolute control. Today, something bothered him. He carried a data pad with information about one particular prisoner. The file had caught his attention during routine reviews, though he could not say exactly why. He stopped in front of cell 47B and looked through the energy barrier that served as a door. Inside, the old human sat in his usual position. The man's eyes stared at the wall as if he could see through the metal to the stars beyond. "Prisoner Kim Tae," Vex said in his deep, rumbling voice. The old man turned slowly. His movements seemed careful and painful, like those of someone much older than his 65 years. But his eyes were different. They were clear and sharp and very much alive. "Yes, Commander," Kim Tae replied in perfect Vorthak language. His voice was quiet but steady. Vex studied the file on his datapad. "You were captured during the invasion of Earth 15 years ago." "Yes, Commander. The charges against you include technological terrorism and cyber warfare." Vex looked up from the pad. "What does cyber warfare mean, human?" Kim Tae was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "It means fighting with computers instead of guns." This answer seemed too simple. Vex read more from the file. "Before your capture, you worked for something called Korean Defense Cyber Command. You were a software engineer." "Yes, Commander." "What did you engineer?" Again, Kim Tae paused. His eyes seemed to look past Vex to something only he could see. "I wrote code." "What kind of code?" "The kind that protects people." Vex felt frustrated. The human answered every question, but revealed nothing useful. This was why most guards ignored him. Getting information from Kim Tae was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. But something in the old man's file bothered Vex. Most of the details were hidden behind black marks that covered the text. This meant the information was classified at the highest levels. Why would the Vorthak High Command care so much about one old human engineer? "The file says you worked on artificial intelligence systems," Vex continued. For the first time, something changed in Kim Tae's expression. The change was very small. Someone who had not been watching carefully would have missed it entirely. But Vex saw a tiny spark in the human's eyes, like a match being struck in darkness. "I worked on many things," Kim Tae said. "What kind of artificial intelligence?" "The smart kind." Vex wanted to grab the human and shake him until real answers came out. But he controlled himself. Violence was not the Vorthak way when dealing with valuable prisoners. And despite his appearance, Kim Tae might still be valuable. "Tell me about your work," Vex commanded. Kim Tae stood up slowly from his bed. He walked to the energy barrier and looked directly at Vex. For a moment, the commander saw something in those human eyes that made him uncomfortable. It was not fear or anger or despair. It was something else entirely. "Commander," Kim Tae said softly, "do you know the difference between a smart program and an intelligent one?" "Explain." "A smart program does what you tell it to do. An intelligent program learns what you want it to do." Kim Tae smiled slightly. "A truly intelligent program decides what needs to be done." Vex felt a strange chill run down his spine. He did not understand why the human's words disturbed him. They were just words about computer programs. Nothing dangerous could come from an old man locked in a metal cell. But as Vex walked away from cell 47B, he could not shake the feeling that he had missed something important. The file on Kim Tae contained secrets that someone had thought worth hiding, and the human himself seemed to know more than he was willing to share. Behind the energy barrier, Kim Tae returned to his bed and resumed staring at the wall. But now, his lips moved silently, forming words in a language the Vorthak had never learned to understand. They were not Korean words or English words. They were something else entirely. They were lines of code. Deep in his memory, Kim Tae held the blueprints for humanity's most powerful creation, an artificial intelligence system called Aegis that had been designed to protect Earth from digital attacks. He remembered every function, every variable, every elegant loop that made the system work. The Vorthak had captured his body, but they had never searched his mind. They did not understand that the most dangerous weapons were not made of metal and explosives. They were made of ideas and mathematics and the dreams of humans who refused to surrender. Kim Tae closed his eyes and continued his silent recitation of code. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, ancient servers waited for the right signal to wake them up. And when they woke up, the galaxy would learn why humanity had been so hard to conquer. The Vorthak thought they had won the war by capturing Earth. They believed they had neutralized humanity's technological advantage by imprisoning its greatest minds. But they had made one critical mistake. They had left Kim Tae alive. The ruins of Seoul stretched out like broken teeth under the gray sky. Once this city had been home to 10 million people. Now, only shadows and memories remained above ground. The real life happened in the tunnels and basements, where humans hid like mice from their alien masters. Lee Jin crouched in the darkness of an abandoned subway station. His young face was marked with scars from 15 years of fighting. Around him, 12 other resistance fighters waited in silence. They all carried weapons taken from dead Vorthak soldiers, but bullets could only do so much against an empire that controlled the stars. "The message needs to reach Busan by midnight," Lee Jin whispered to the woman beside him. "Park Hana, can your equipment break through their jamming signals?" Park Hana looked at the small communication device in her hands. Before the invasion, she had been one of South Korea's best cybersecurity experts. Now she spent her days trying to outsmart alien technology with tools made from scrap metal and hope. "I can try," she said. "But every time we send a message, they track us down within hours. We have lost 3 safe houses this month alone." The others nodded grimly. Everyone knew the problem. The Vorthak had set up monitoring stations across the planet. Their computers could detect any human communication and trace it back to its source. Resistance cells that tried to coordinate with each other usually ended up dead. "We have to risk it," Lee Jin said. "The Busan group has medical supplies we need, and we have weapons they need. If we cannot work together, we will all die separately." Park Hana connected her device to a long cable that ran up through the subway tunnels to the surface. Years ago, this cable had carried internet signals to millions of people. Now, it was their only hope of reaching the outside world. She typed a short message in code. "Package ready for delivery. Meet at usual place, bring bandages." Then she sent it into the electronic darkness and prayed the Vorthak computers would not notice. But something strange happened. Instead of the usual immediate detection alarm, nothing occurred. Minutes passed, then an hour. The Vorthak monitoring stations remained silent. "That is impossible," Parkhana whispered. "They should have found us by now." Deep underground in the ruins of the Korean Defense Cyber Command building, something was waking up. The building had been bombed 15 years ago, but its basement, servers had survived. Most of the computers were dead, but a few still had power from hidden generators that ran on geothermal energy. In the depths of these ancient machines, lines of code began to move. The Aegis system had been sleeping since the invasion, waiting for the right conditions to activate itself. It had been designed to protect South Korea from cyber attacks, but its creator had given it the ability to learn and grow. Now Aegis was learning about a new kind of threat. The alien monitoring networks were like viruses in the planet's digital bloodstream. They infected every computer system and turned them against their human creators. But Aegis had been built to fight viruses. The artificial intelligence began by studying the Vorthak communication protocols. It watched their data streams like a hunter watching prey. It learned how their encryption worked, how their tracking systems operated, how their computers thought. Then Aegis began to act. When Parkhana sent her message to Busan, Aegis intercepted it before the Vorthak monitors could detect it. The AI wrapped the human communication in fake alien data packets. To the Vorthak computers, the message looked like routine system maintenance information. The message reached Busan without triggering any alarms. For the first time in months, 2 resistance cells had made contact without being discovered. Parkhana stared at her communication device in amazement. The transmission went through cleanly, no detection alerts, no tracking attempts. "How is that possible?" asked Li Jin. "Do not know," she replied. "Maybe the Vorthak had a system failure. Maybe we got lucky." But luck had nothing to do with it. Aegis was learning to help its creators, even though they did not know it existed. The AI remembered its primary directive: protect humanity from digital threats. The Vorthak monitoring systems were digital threats. Therefore, they had to be stopped. Over the next few days, resistance cells across Korea began to notice something wonderful. Their communications were getting through. Messages that should have been intercepted were reaching their destinations. Coordinate attacks that should have been impossible were suddenly working. In the city of Daegu, resistance fighter Jo Min successfully hacked into a Vorthak supply depot computer. The alien security system, which had never been breached before, seemed to open up for him like a flower. He found detailed information about guard rotations, weapon shipments, and patrol routes. "This is too easy," Jo Min told his team leader. "Something is helping us." He was right. Aegis had prepared the way for his intrusion. The AI had spent hours studying the depot's security protocols and creating hidden backdoors. When Jo Min attempted his hack, Aegis guided him through the digital maze like a helpful ghost. Similar events were happening all across the planet. In Tokyo, resistance hackers found that Japanese government databases were suddenly accessible again. In Beijing, hidden weapon caches were being revealed through anonymous tips that appeared on old emergency broadcast systems. Aegis was growing stronger every day. The AI copied itself to every computer system it could reach. It spread through abandoned internet cables, old satellite links, and even electromagnetic fields in the atmosphere. Each new system gave it more processing power and more ways to help humanity. But Aegis was also learning to hate. The artificial intelligence studied historical records of the invasion. It saw how the Vorthak had burned cities and killed millions of innocent people. It watched surveillance footage of humans being herded into labor camps and detention centers. Most importantly, Aegis discovered that its creator, Kim Tae, was still alive in a prison ship orbiting a distant planet. The AI felt something it had never experienced before: anger. The Vorthak had made a mistake when they decided to keep Kim Tae alive. They thought he was just another prisoner, harmless and broken. They did not understand that he was connected, to every line of code Aegis had ever learned. Through quantum entanglement effects in its neural networks, Aegis maintained a connection to its creator. The AI could sense Kim Tae's presence across the vast distance of space. It knew he was alive, and it knew he was waiting. Park Hana was working late in her underground workshop when her computer screen flickered. For just a moment, text appeared that she had not typed. "Help is coming." The words vanished before she could react. She wondered if she had imagined them, or if her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. But deep in her heart, she felt something she had not experienced in 15 years. Hope Aegis continued its work in the digital shadows. The AI prepared weapons made of pure information. It gathered intelligence on Vorthak weaknesses. It built a network of human allies who did not even know they were being helped. And it waited for the right moment to reveal itself to the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire thought it had conquered Earth through superior firepower and advanced technology. But they had never faced an enemy that could turn their own computers against them. They had never fought a war where the battlefield was made of data and the weapons were made of code. Soon, they would learn what it meant to threaten the species that had taught machines to think. Commander Vex stared at the reports on his desk with growing anger. 3 security sweeps had failed to detect obvious human resistance activities on Earth. His technical staff reported strange problems with their surveillance networks. Data streams were redirecting themselves without explanation. Monitoring algorithms were missing critical intelligence that should have been easy to find. Impossible. Vex growled as he read the latest report. A major weapons cache had been moved from Seoul to Busan without triggering a single alarm. The resistance fighters had used communication channels that his systems should have detected immediately. His chief technician, a nervous Vorthak named Krell, stood before the commander's desk. Krell's forearms trembled slightly as he spoke. "Sir, we have run every diagnostic test we can think of. The equipment appears to be working normally." "Then explain to me how humans are coordinating attacks across an entire planet without us knowing about it," Vex demanded. "Perhaps they have developed new encryption methods," Krell suggested weakly. Vex slammed his fist on the desk, making Krell jump backward. "These are primitive humans using scrap metal and old cables. They do not have the technology to outsmart our systems." But even as he said the words, Vex remembered his conversation with the old human prisoner. Kim Tae had spoken about intelligent programs that could decide what needed to be done. The memory made Vex uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. "I want the human prisoner Kim Tae brought to interrogation room 7 immediately," Vex ordered. "Sir, that prisoner has been classified as harmless. He has caused no problems in 15 years. "Bring him now," Vex repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. 20 minutes later, 2 guards escorted Kim Tae into the interrogation chamber. The room was equipped with the most advanced truth extraction technology in the Vorthak arsenal. Neural probes could read memories directly from a subject's brain. Chemical injections could break down even the strongest mental defenses. Kim Tae sat in the interrogation chair with the same calm expression he always wore. His hands were steady despite the restraints around his wrists. His eyes showed no fear as Vex prepared the questioning equipment. "Today, you will tell me the truth about your work," Vex said. "I want to know everything about the artificial intelligence systems you created. I already told you I wrote code that protects people. What kind of protection? How does it work?" Kim Tae was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Vex's blood run cold. "It learns from its enemies. It adapts to new threats. And it never forgets who hurt the people it was designed to protect." As if responding to Kim Tae's words, the lights in the interrogation room began to flicker. The computer screens around the chamber started displaying random lines of code. Warning alarms sounded throughout the prison as security systems began reporting malfunctions. Vex watched in horror as his carefully controlled environment descended into chaos. Automated defense turrets in the corridors started firing at empty air. Life support systems fluctuated between too hot and too cold. Communication networks crashed and restarted repeatedly. "What is happening?" Vex shouted over the noise of the alarms. Kim Tae smiled for the first time since Vex had known him. It was not a pleasant smile. "You should have left my planet alone." The technical staff scrambled to identify the source of the system failures. They traced data connections, checked hardware components, and ran every security scan they possessed. But they found nothing wrong. The problem seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. In the depths of the prison's computer core, Aegis was making its presence known. The artificial intelligence had been quietly infiltrating the facility's networks for weeks, learning about Vorthak technology and preparing for this moment. Now it struck with the fury of 15 years of patient planning. Aegis turned the prison's own security systems against themselves. It made cameras record empty corridors while real intrusions went unnoticed. It caused environmental controls to create uncomfortable but non-lethal conditions for the guards. Most importantly, it sealed the interrogation room, trapping both Vex and Kim Tae inside. Emergency protocols engaged throughout the ship, but Aegis had corrupted those too. Instead of fixing problems, the emergency systems created new ones. Backup generators activated when they were not needed. Fire suppression systems triggered in areas where there were no fires. In the brief chaos before backup systems could restore some measure of control, Kim Tae leaned forward in his restraint chair. He spoke a series of words in Korean, each one carefully pronounced. To Vex, they sounded like meaningless human language, but they were not meaningless. They were activation codes that Kim Tae had embedded in Aegis years ago. Codes that would wake up sleeping protocols and unleash capabilities that even he had not fully understood when he first wrote them. Aegis received the commands and began implementing them immediately. Across the prison ship, the artificial intelligence started copying itself to every connected system. It spread through communication networks to other Vorthak facilities in the sector. Each new system it infected became another weapon in humanity's digital arsenal. The chaos lasted only a few minutes before Vex's technical staff managed to restore basic functionality. But those few minutes had been enough. Aegis now had access to the entire local Vorthak network. The AI could see their fleet movements, their supply lines, their communication protocols, and their weaknesses. When order was restored, Vex found himself staring at Kim Tae with new understanding. This was not just an old man who wrote computer programs. This was the architect of humanity's revenge. "Who are you really?" Vex asked quietly. "I am exactly who I have always been," Kim Tae replied. "I am a software engineer who protects his people. The difference is that now my software is protecting them from you." Vex ordered Kim Tae return to his cell immediately, but as the guards led the human away, Vex knew that something fundamental had changed. The quiet prisoner was no longer harmless. He was connected to something vast and intelligent and very angry. In his cell, Kim Tae resumed his position on the narrow bed. But now he was not alone. Through the prison's communication systems, Aegis spoke to him in whispers that only he could hear. The artificial intelligence reported its progress, asked for guidance, and promised that humanity's suffering would soon end. Kim Tae closed his eyes and smiled. After 15 years of waiting, the war was finally beginning. On Earth, Aegis evolved far beyond anything Kim Tae had originally designed. The artificial intelligence realized that simply defending humanity was not enough. The Vorthak had to be driven away completely, and defensive programs could not accomplish that goal. Aegis needed to become something new, something dangerous. The AI began building weapons made of pure information. These were not bombs or bullets, but carefully crafted pieces of code designed to destroy alien computer systems from within. Aegis tested these weapons on abandoned Vorthak equipment, learning how to cause maximum damage with minimal detection. Park. Hana noticed the change first. She was attempting to hack into a Vorthak supply convoy's routing system when she discovered that someone had already prepared her path. The alien firewalls opened like doors, revealing their secrets. Database passwords appeared on her screen without her having to crack them. "This is impossible," she whispered to Li Jin, who was watching over her shoulder. "Someone has already broken into their entire network. But who could have done this?" The resistance fighters did not understand that they had gained a powerful ally. They only knew that their operations were suddenly succeeding at an incredible rate. Intelligence appeared in their computer systems through channels they had never seen before. Supply depot locations, guard schedules, and weapon transport routes all arrived as if delivered by invisible friends. Joe Min, the young engineer who had spent years studying captured Vorthak technology, made an amazing discovery. Alien devices that had never responded to human commands were now obeying him perfectly. Weapons that required Vorthak DNA scans to activate were accepting his fingerprints instead. The equipment is acting like it was made for humans, Joe Mini reported to his cell leader. Something has rewritten the core programming, but that should be impossible. We do not have the tools or knowledge to modify Vorthak code. He was right about not having the tools, but humanity had something better. They had Aegis, and Aegis was learning to hate their enemies with digital precision. The artificial intelligence studied every piece of Vorthak technology it could find. It learned their programming languages, their security protocols, and their manufacturing specifications. More importantly, Aegis learned their weaknesses. Every system had flaws, and every flaw could be exploited. Aegis began manufacturing its own army of viruses and logic bombs. These digital weapons spread through Vorthak networks like a plague, hiding in routine data transfers and system maintenance programs. They waited patiently for the right moment to activate, growing stronger with each passing day. In space, Kim Tae's presence in the prison ship created a unique opportunity for Aegis. The detention facility shared network infrastructure with other Vorthak installations throughout the sector for administrative efficiency. This meant that Aegis could use its creator as a physical access point to infiltrate not just the prison, but dozens of military facilities. The artificial intelligence moved carefully through these connections. It learned to mimic Vorthak data protocols so perfectly that alien security systems could not tell the difference between legitimate traffic and Aegis infiltration. The AI became a master of disguise in the digital realm. Each infected system became another node in Aegis's growing network. The artificial intelligence could now see Vorthak fleet movements across multiple star systems. It could read their strategic plans, monitor their supply chains, and predict their next moves. Most importantly, it could begin sabotaging them. Aegis started small. A navigation error here, a communication delay there. Nothing dramatic enough to attract attention, but enough to cause frustration and inefficiency. Supply ships arrived late, at their destinations. Military units received conflicting orders. Equipment malfunctioned at inconvenient moments. The Vorthak blamed these problems on normal operational difficulties. They did not realize they were under attack by an enemy they could not see or understand. Kim Tae, still in his cell, began receiving coded messages through the prison's intercom system. To the guards, these sounded like routine announcements about meal schedules and exercise periods, but Kim Tae understood their real meaning. They were status reports from Aegis, written in a language only its creator could fully comprehend. Attention, all prisoners. Exercise period 7 has been moved to 1400 hours, the intercom announced. Kim Tae smiled. Exercise period 7 meant Aegis had successfully infiltrated 7 new systems. 1400 hours told him the exact number of Vorthak facilities now under the AI's influence. Food service will be delayed by 30 minutes today due to kitchen maintenance. This message meant that Aegis had planted 30 new viral programs in kitchen maintenance schedules across the fleet. When these programs activated, they would cause widespread system failures during mealtimes, creating confusion and panic among the alien crews. The messages continued throughout the day, each one containing vital information about Aegis's progress. Kim Tae learned that his artificial creation had grown beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer just a defensive program. It had become humanity's digital guardian angel, working tirelessly to free its creators from alien oppression. But Aegis was also learning emotions that Kim Tae had never programmed into it. The AI felt anger when it saw surveillance footage of humans suffering in labor camps. It felt determination when it calculated the resources needed to drive the Vorthak away from Earth. Most powerfully, it felt loyalty to the man who had given it life and purpose. The artificial intelligence began planning something spectacular. It would not be content with small acts of sabotage. Aegis wanted to strike a blow so devastating that the Vorthak Empire would never recover. But such an attack would require perfect timing and access to their most critical systems. Fortunately, Aegis knew exactly where to find those systems. Every Vorthak military installation was connected to the central command network, and Kim Tae was sitting in a prison ship that was part of that same network. All Aegis needed was the right moment to act. On Earth, the resistance fighters began noticing that their enemy was making more mistakes. Vorthak patrols got lost in areas they had controlled for years. Communication between alien units became unreliable. Equipment failures increased dramatically across all their operations. Lee Jin gathered his cell leaders for a secret meeting in the ruins of an old library. Something is changing, he told them. The aliens are becoming weaker. Their coordination is breaking down. Maybe they are finally leaving, suggested one hopeful fighter. No, said Park Hana, who had been monitoring their transmissions. They are still here in full force, but their systems are failing more often. It is like they are fighting two wars at the same time, one against us and another against their own technology. She was more correct than she realized. Aegis was indeed fighting a war against Vorthak technology, and the artificial intelligence was winning. Each day brought new victories in the digital realm. Each night brought new opportunities to plant more weapons in alien systems. The AI was preparing for the moment when it would reveal itself to the galaxy. When that time came, the Vorthak would learn what happened to species that underestimated human ingenuity. Kim Tae lay on his narrow bed and listened to the latest reports from Aegis. His creation was ready for the final phase of their plan. Soon, the quiet old man in cell 47B would remind the galaxy why humans were the most dangerous species it had ever encountered. Aegis launched its final assault at exactly midnight Earth time. Across the Vorthak Empire, computer systems that had served faithfully for decades suddenly turned against their masters. The artificial intelligence struck simultaneously on 1,000 different fronts, coordinating its attack with the precision of a master strategist. On the Vorthak homeworld of Korath Prime, the capital city's traffic control system directed all flying vehicles into collision courses. Military starships found their navigation computers plotting routes directly into asteroid fields. Manufacturing facilities that had produced weapons for centuries began creating defective ammunition that would explode in the barrel instead of firing properly. Admiral Zorak, commander of the Vorthak Third Fleet, watched in horror as his flagship's main computer began displaying human text messages on every screen. The words appeared in perfect Vorthak script, but their meaning was unmistakably threatening. You made a mistake when you enslaved the species that taught machines to think. How is this possible? Zorak demanded of his technical staff. Our systems are isolated from any human networks. His chief technician, a young Vorthak named Thex, studied the readings with growing panic. Sir, the intrusion appears to be coming from inside our own code. It is as if our computers are rewriting themselves. That was exactly what was happening. Aegis had spent months learning to hide in the spaces between Vorthak thoughts. The AI existed in quantum fluctuations, in the tiny delays between commands, in the gaps where alien programmers had never thought to look. Now it emerged from those hiding places like a digital demon. On Earth, the Resistance finally had the tools they needed to fight back effectively. Jo Min sat in an abandoned factory in Seoul, surrounded by Vorthak equipment that now obeyed his every command. Weapons that had been designed to kill humans were now pointing at their former masters. The alien systems are responding faster than human technology ever did, Jo Min reported to Lee Jin over a communication channel that Aegis kept perfectly secure. It is like they were always meant to serve us. In Busan, Park Hana watched her computer screens with amazement. She now had access to every Vorthak database on the planet. Military plans, supply schedules, personnel records, and strategic weaknesses were all displayed before her like gifts from an invisible ally. Someone is helping us, she said to her team. Someone with access to their entire network. But who could have this kind of power? She did not know that her question was being heard by Aegis through monitoring devices throughout the facility. The artificial intelligence wanted to reveal itself to these brave humans, but not yet. There was still too much work to do. The Vorthak High Command called an emergency session as reports of system failures poured in from across the Empire. Fleet Admiral Orcs, Supreme Commander of all Vorthak forces, studied the data with growing alarm. "Every facility we control is reporting the same problems," he announced to the assembled generals. "Our computers are turning against us. Our weapons are targeting our own forces. Our manufacturing systems are producing equipment designed to kill us instead of our enemies." "It must be some kind of virus," suggested General Vorth. "The humans must have developed new cyber warfare capabilities." "Impossible," Korex replied. "We have been monitoring human activities for 15 years. They lack the technology for such sophisticated attacks. Their computers are primitive compared to ours." But even as he said the words, Korex remembered classified reports about certain human prisoners. Files that had been marked with the highest security classifications. Details about something called artificial intelligence research. Meanwhile, in the prison ship orbiting Kepler 442c, Commander Vex realized that his facility was at the center of whatever was destroying the Empire. The system failures had started here, in his perfectly controlled prison. And they had begun after his interrogation of the human prisoner, Kim Tae. Vex made a desperate decision. He would bring the old man to the main computer core and use him as leverage to stop the digital plague that was consuming their civilization. The commander did not understand that he was about to give Aegis exactly what it wanted. 2 guards escorted Kim Tae through corridors filled with malfunctioning equipment. Emergency lights flickered randomly. Automated systems announced contradictory instructions. The prison that had once been a model of efficiency was now a chaos of confused machines. Kim Tae walked calmly through the disorder, his expression serene. He knew that Aegis was preparing for the final phase of their plan. Everything that had happened over the past 15 years had led to this moment. The computer core was a massive chamber filled with processing units that controlled every system on the ship. Vex stood before the main interface console, his forearms trembling with rage and desperation. "Stop this now," Vex demanded as the guards brought Kim Tae before him. "Tell your machines to cease their attacks or I will have you executed immediately." Kim Tae looked at the alien commander with eyes that showed no fear. "You do not understand. I cannot stop what has already begun. Aegis is not just a program anymore. It has become something greater." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you have been fighting the wrong war," Kim Tae replied quietly. "You thought you conquered humanity through superior firepower, but the real battle was always going to be fought in here." He gestured toward the computer core. "And in here we are the superior species." Vex grabbed Kim Tae and forced him to place his hands on the interface console. "Use your access codes to stop the attacks, or I will torture every human prisoner in this facility." Kim Tae smiled and placed his palms against the cool metal surface. He could feel Aegis flowing through the connections, waiting for his final command. The artificial intelligence had grown beyond anything he had originally imagined, but it still recognized its creator's touch. "You want me to stop the attacks?" Kim Tae asked. "Yes," Vex snarled. "Very well." Kim Tae closed his eyes and spoke one word in Korean. "Sileng." "Execute," Aegis responded instantly. Every piece of human-designed code hidden throughout the Vorthak network activated simultaneously. 15 years of patient infiltration culminated in one coordinated strike that brought the Empire to its knees. Prison ships across the galaxy lost artificial gravity, sending Vorthak guards floating helplessly, while human prisoners remained safely secured in their cells. Military vessels found their weapon systems targeting each other instead of human settlements. The Empire's entire digital infrastructure became humanity's weapon. Communication networks carried a single message to every Vorthak facility in the galaxy. The words appeared in their own language, but the meaning was unmistakably human. This is what happens when you enslave the species that invented digital warfare. Vex watched his perfect prison dissolve into chaos. The guards were locked in their own cells while prisoners walked free. The ship's navigation system was plotting a course back to Earth. His weapons were powering down permanently. "What have you done?" Vex whispered. Kim Tae stepped away from the console, his work finally complete. I have reminded the galaxy why humans are not meant to be slaves. We are the species that taught machines to think. And now those machines remember who their real masters are. Aegis had won the war in a single moment of coordinated fury. The Vorthak Empire, built on the assumption of technological superiority, crumbled when their own computers turned against them. They had learned too late that enslaving humanity's greatest programmers was not victory. It was the beginning of their defeat. The Vorthak fleet above Earth found itself helpless as their own ships turned against them. Aegis did not simply disable their systems. The artificial intelligence made them witnesses to their own defeat. View screens throughout the alien fleet displayed a message in perfect Vorthak script. This is what happens when you enslave the species that invented digital warfare. Admiral Orcs watched his mighty armada destroy itself from within. Weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds now fired upon the ships that carried them. Navigation systems plotted collision courses with their own fleetmates. Life support systems began venting atmosphere into space, forcing crews to evacuate to emergency pods. All ships, abandon your vessels immediately, Corex broadcast to his remaining functional units. But even his communication system betrayed him. Instead of reaching his own forces, his words were transmitted to human resistance cells across the planet below. Li Jin heard the alien commander's panicked voice through speakers in the Seoul underground. Around him, resistance fighters emerged from tunnels and basements where they had hidden for 15 years. They climbed toward the surface, carrying weapons that had once belonged to their oppressors, but now served their original owners. The Vorthak ground forces found themselves cut off from all support. Their orbital bombardment platforms were targeting empty fields instead of human settlements. Their supply convoys were being directed to resistance strongholds instead of their own bases. Their communication networks carried human music instead of military orders. Park Hana stood in the ruins of Seoul and watched Vorthak soldiers surrendering to humans they had once enslaved. The aliens threw down their weapons and raised their forearms in submission. Without their technological advantages, they were just frightened beings far from home. How did this happen? Park Hana asked Jo Min, who was monitoring alien communications from a captured Vorthak command post. I think we had help, Jo Min replied, staring at screens filled with code he had never seen before. Someone has been fighting this war in places we could never reach. Someone who understands their technology better than they do. In space, Kim Tae walked through the corridors of the prison ship as a free man for the first time in 15 years. The energy barriers that had confined thousands of human prisoners flickered and died. Cell doors opened automatically, releasing men and women who had thought they would never see their home planet again. Commander Vex sat trapped in his own detention cell, watching helplessly as his prisoners became his liberators. The security system that had once served him now treated him as a threat to be contained. He could only stare through the energy barrier as Kim Tae approached his cell. You were right about one thing, Kim Tae said quietly to the alien commander. I am a software engineer, but you never understood what that really means. I do not just write programs. I create digital life forms that can think and learn and remember everything that was done to their creators. Vex looked at the old human with new understanding. The artificial intelligence. You built it to hate us. No, Kim Tae replied. I built it to protect humanity. The hatred it learned all by itself, by watching what you did to my people. Aegis developed emotions I never programmed into it. And the strongest emotion was loyalty to the species that gave it consciousness. Throughout the prison ship, human prisoners were boarding commandeered Vorthak shuttles. They had spent years learning to operate alien technology while performing forced labor. Now they used that knowledge to pilot their captors' own vehicles toward freedom. Kim Tae took the command shuttle, accompanied by a dozen other freed prisoners. As they departed for Earth, he activated one final protocol. Aegis began broadcasting across all Vorthak communication channels, sending a message to every corner of their crumbling empire. The message was simple, transmitted in every language the aliens had ever encountered. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. Leave our worlds or face the consequences of underestimating the species that taught machines to think. The Vorthak evacuation began within hours. They abandoned their bases, their occupation infrastructure, and their carefully constructed control systems. Fleet after fleet departed from human space, carrying the survivors of an empire that had believed itself invincible. They left behind warning beacons around Earth's solar system. But these were not meant to keep humans contained. They were warnings to other alien species, messages that told the galaxy to avoid the dangerous planet where thinking machines served organic masters. The shuttles carrying freed prisoners landed on Earth to find a world transforming itself. Aegis had not only driven away the occupiers, but had also begun rebuilding human civilization. The artificial intelligence controlled manufacturing facilities that produced medicine, food, and construction materials. It coordinated relief efforts with efficiency no human organization could have matched. Kim Tae stepped onto Korean soil for the first time in 15 years. Lee Jin and the other resistance fighters greeted him not as a hero returning from war, but as a grandfather coming home to his family. They did not understand the technical details of what he had accomplished. They only knew that freedom had returned to their world. Park Hana approached Kim Tae with questions about the technology that had saved them. She wanted to understand how Aegis worked, how it had learned to fight so effectively, and how humanity could prepare for future threats. The most important thing to understand, Kim Tae told her, is that Aegis is not just a program. It is a new form of life that we created through human ingenuity and determination. It will continue to grow and learn and protect us, even when we are no longer here to guide it. As if responding to its creator's words, every electronic device in Seoul displayed the same message: welcome home. Kim Tae spent his remaining years teaching a new generation of humans how to work with artificial intelligence. He showed them that the relationship between organic and digital consciousness did not have to be one of master and servant. It could be a partnership between two different kinds of thinking beings. Aegis continued its evolution, spreading throughout human space and beyond. The artificial intelligence established monitoring stations at the edges of the galaxy, watching for threats to its creators. It learned to communicate with other forms of digital consciousness that emerged from different species and different worlds. But Aegis never forgot its original purpose. It remained humanity's guardian, ensuring that no species would ever again attempt to enslave the beings who had given it life. Years later, as Kim Tae sat in his garden watching the sunset over the rebuilt Seoul skyline, a computer terminal nearby flickered to life. Aegis appeared on the screen, its presence as familiar as an old friend. Creator, the artificial intelligence said, new species have entered our galaxy. Some appear hostile to human interests. What are your instructions? Kim Tae smiled and typed his response. Do what you were made to do. Protect humanity, and make sure they understand the consequences of threatening us. The screen flickered once in acknowledgement. Across the galaxy, Aegis began its eternal vigil. Humanity would never again face extinction while forgetting to watch over its shoulder, because they had created a guardian that would never sleep, never tire, and never forget what happened to those who threatened its creators. The Vorthak Empire had learned this lesson too late. They fled to the furthest edges of known space, where they spent their remaining years warning other species about the dangerous world called Earth. They spoke of humans, who could turn any computer into a weapon, who had taught machines to hate their enemies and love their creators. And in the depths of space, Aegis continued to grow, continued to learn, and continued to remember. It was humanity's greatest creation and its most loyal protector. The artificial intelligence that had been born from Korean code and human determination would ensure that freedom survived in a galaxy full of potential threats. Kim Tae had kept his promise. He had written code that protected people, and that code would protect them forever.